It's so good to be back with Kevin Hassett here at the White House. Mr. Hassett, you've been busy since I saw you last.
Yeah, I guess so.
Post-Liberation Day. Good morning.
Yeah, it's been really Trump time. Seems like it's double Trump time right now, but it's a great joy to be here.
You walk into the belly of the beast, these Sunday shows with regularity now, and all of them are looking at market gyrations and, hyperventilating. How do you deal with people who look at the market day to day and say, 1,000-point slide here, 500 up there? What do you say to people that react violently every day to this stuff?
I think that, of course, markets are going to move up and down regardless of what a White House does. And in the end, I think that what a person should do is think about when all is said and done, when Americans have onshored their jobs and there's a lot more wage growth and artificial intelligence is making everything better. I think a year from now, is the U.S. economy going to be way better or way worse? And it's obviously got to be way better.
Yeah.
And with a much stronger economy, there'll be stronger profit growth, stronger wage growth, and so markets will be fine. But what markets don't like in any administration is having to digest change. And President Trump is an agent of change who is voted in because Americans decided that the economy that Joe Biden handed us was a sick patient that needed some fixing. And so right now we're working with Congress to get a big tax bill through. We're deregulating like crazy. We're stopping the crazy DEI stuff everywhere that's taking away merit from the workforce. And we're changing trade policy. And all of those big changes are uncertainties for markets. So of course they're going to gyrate a little. But for the typical listener, the person who's got some money in equity markets, you should buy and hold. It's always the right strategy. And the reason is because a year from now, you just know things are going to be way better than they were a year ago.
That was my question. Peter Navarro once said he believes that by the end of this term, that is by 28, bank on it, the market will be at least 50,000. You agree?
I'm not going to make a market prediction, but what I can tell you is that President Trump gave us 3% GDP growth and $6,500 in the first 3 years of his term in increased real wages, adjusted for inflation. Real wages went down under Joe Biden, and I can tell you right now that we're going to have more than 3% growth over these 4 years and more than $6,500 in real wage growth. And so that the American persons listening right now, the ordinary folks that work hard every day, can be confident that their real welfare is going to go higher and higher. And so think about this in terms of the problems that you get when you listen to the fake news about what's going on in the economy, is they say, what's going to happen to prices if you have a tariff? What's going to happen to prices? Well, when China entered the WTO, everybody told us that we'd be way better off because prices would go down. But in fact, real wages, which is your income adjusted for inflation, went down for 15 years in a row.
Yes.
And so what's happening is that they're thinking all about like the potential bad news about prices, which isn't going to be all that bad, and forgetting that if we have a big increase in labor supply, in labor demand, then wages are going to go way up, and they're going to go up way more than anything that happens to prices. And so people are going to be better off, and I'm highly confident that's true.
As you and I talked today, I don't know if you saw Vice President Vance's remarks in India this morning. I was struck by them because to me it was a loud and clear message to the nation. Hey, you got to work with us. We can do big things, but your neighbors, they don't mean any of us well. He didn't say that explicitly, but that was what I took away from it, particularly given what China said yesterday. Any nation that does business with the United States on trade is going to have to deal with us. What are we to take from China making that threat?
I'm not going to talk about China right now because I think everybody wants the China situation to move forward.
Yeah.
And we'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
But the fact is that the incredible progress we've made with India, because President Trump, with his reciprocal tariffs, got them to the table, got them to start to treat American workers fairly, and open up products that could never be shipped to India before, like agricultural products. All of these things are being negotiated with the U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer, and what the Vice President reports is, again, with his leadership too, all the way over there in India, is that the progress is astonishing. And I think that if you're looking for something to really feel buoyant about, to celebrate, think about it this way. It's probably the case that historically, the country that had the least beneficial trade policy towards the U.S. on earth was India. They had trade barriers. You can't buy this, you can't buy that. They had 85% tariffs on motorcycles, on Harley Davidsons. I mean, they were wrong in almost every direction, and to think about it that they're the first ones coming to the table, that's a sign of the power of President Trump's strategy.
That's huge. I did not know that. That's amazing. When you talk about this group of you, from Besant to Navarro to Lutnick to you, when you're all in the room, I know you must have divergent points of view on economics from time to time. When you leave the room, is there an agreement to disagree? Are you all on the same page? Are you free to speak your differences amongst one another? How do you communicate this when maybe you don't see eye to eye on everything?
Oh, I would say the job of the director of the National Economic Council, which is a little bit different than the others, is that our job is to help make sure that the president's other advisors and cabinet secretaries reach consensus, have a safe place where they can debate, and I'm meant to, as little as possible, intrude my own opinion into those debates, although I'll guide a little bit now and then. But the fact is the president has chosen astonishing people that are all really close friends of mine: the Treasury Secretary, the Commerce Secretary, Peter Navarro, and others, and Jameson Greer, and we get in a room and we decide, here's what we think we ought to do, and then we go in and talk to the president about it, and probably nobody exactly agrees, but almost always every single one of them through that whole set of disagreement disagrees with the president as well.
Yeah.
And so I think that those conversations we have in the Oval are amongst the most stimulating, thought-provoking, intellectually challenging meetings I've ever had in my life. And so the president doesn't want a bunch of yes men. You wonder, like, who was advising Joe Biden? Like, who even got to see him? Well, President Trump likes to have people. Everybody knows that Peter and I disagree on a lot of things, but we're very close friends. And the president wants us both in the room disagreeing because that's how he figures out what he wants to think.
That was my question. I think the press loves to try to find the daylight between you guys. When you talk, you leave a room, you all leave as friends. There's no animus, is what you're saying.
No, there is none. There is absolutely none. And it's for real. The way to think about it, I guess, is it's a complete, not a reasonable comparison to people that go to war in a foxhole together or something, because this is easy compared to the people who actually serve the country and put their lives on the line. But you're in the public eye. There's a lot of pressure. These decisions have to be made correctly by the president. So you've got to give him advice that's accurate and not misleading. And so it's a lot of pressure. And what it does is it builds a kind of camaraderie that will last a lifetime. And I can tell you that when Peter, very unjustly was put in jail, that I communicated with him to make sure he was okay as much as I could. You have to go through these, if you've ever had to deal with a friend who was in prison, you have to go through this complicated prison communication process. But of course, I'll be there for Peter Navarro for the rest of his life, and he'll be there for me as well.
Scott Besant has taken to social media in the last couple of days to speak to people's financial literacy. That is, learn how to invest, learn how to make a buck. The country's been great to me. We need everybody to learn how to do this too. I thought it was sort of interesting. Is that a purposeful message? Because we don't hear that often from Washington. Hey, you, John and Jane Q, consumer and taxpayer. Let's improve financial literacy. Let's help everybody. That's important to him?
Yes, it's very important to Scott, because a little bit of financial literacy can go a long way. There's been some academic work that shows that if people look up their credit score and then think about their credit score, and then think about things they can do to improve their credit score, those are all things that people listening right now can just do, with a little bit of searching on the internet. Then the folks who go through that process improve their lives permanently in a good way. Because once you think about, well, what can I do to have a better credit score, then you're just starting to be financially literate in a way that serves you in many, many different ways. It's often surprising ways. So the effect of having people just go try to increase their credit score and thinking about how to do that is like a first step on the way to financial literacy, and there's a very strong positive effect on people's lives. And so the Treasury Secretary, it's a big issue for him because he really cares about improving people's lives.
He shared a statistic on the Tucker Carlson show that I heard. I know you know it. I was 88% of the market is owned by the top 10%. The next 12% owned by about 40% of us, and then the other 50% of the country, he said, are in debt. Those numbers sound right. I was a little floored by them, to be perfectly honest.
There are different ways to measure that, and so the way that those numbers are correct for people who are owning individual stocks or even mutual funds, but outside of their retirement accounts. But there are a lot of people that have equities in retirement accounts that would change those numbers a little bit.
So that's different.
That's
people
different,
that are invested.
yeah.
Okay, that's it.
But if you think about it, like having your money outside of your retirement account, having enough financial literacy to know, hey, I'm not just going to use my 401k the way that the plan director at my office says I should do. I'm actually going to think about, should I invest in equities with my out of retirement money as well? It's generally a good idea to have a really sound financial plan, both in and out of retirement, because you might want to have to buy a house a few years from now, put your kids through college, right? And so all those investment decisions should happen in and outside retirement accounts. And I think that what Scott's basically talking about is that the outside retirement account money is really not invested wisely by Americans on average.
You've been gracious with your time. I'll ask you finally, on the big, beautiful bill, are you in the room for a lot of the discussions between Thune and Johnson and the Republicans?
That's right. Yeah,
You're
I'm
in that
part
room.
of the Big Six. So it's the Treasury Secretary and me and the Majority Leader and the Speaker and then the Chairman of the two relevant committees, Ways and Means and Finance. And we have a regular meeting about every 10 days to go over what we're doing. And in fact, my colleague to the right of me, who's over here, we just had a meeting with the Chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors to go over the tax plan so that the President would finalize the things he cares most about by the end of this week, so that when everybody gets back into town, that we put all our chips on the table for what the president thinks should be in the bill. And we've been doing it all along, but now we've got scores and we got this and that decision to make, and we're getting ready for a big meeting this week to make that.
So to be
happen.
clear, on the issue of taxes specifically, you think you have a framework now?
Oh, for sure, yeah.
That's done. How about spending cuts?
Yeah, for sure.
Those
Absolutely.
are done too.
Well, I mean, there's done, and then there's done.
Yeah.
So what I mean is that the analysis has been done so that all the options can be presented accurately to the president, and he can make up his mind. But my first meeting with the president, when I came back into the White House right after the 20th, we talked about a sketch of what he wanted in the tax bill. He talked about it on the campaign trail all along. There's no mystery about what he wants in the tax bill. Things like the 15% rate for domestic manufacturing, the no tax on tips, all of these things. But the point is going from no tax on tips to a proposal that specifically says how do you do that and how do you not turn it into a way for people to commit tax fraud.
Yes.
All that work has now been done.
Wow. And on the cuts, the $1.5 trillion, the Senate says they're not so confident they can get there. House demands that, and at least that. Are they close there?
They're gonna get a bill. They're gonna get a big, beautiful bill, and the President Trump is gonna make sure that they get it over the finish line.
And Memorial Day is the deadline for the president. Do you think they'll meet that?
I think the House will probably pass stuff pretty quickly, and then the Senate will do what the Senate does.
Okay.
And hopefully they'll meet the deadline of the President, and that's what we're all hoping for.
Boy, that's some big news here today. I feel like we broke a little something. At least I think
don't
so. Kevin Hassett, it's a real pleasure to
good
catch
talk
up
to you,
again.
Chris. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Good to see you.